Hey guys, welcome back to Jessin Reads Romance. I'm Jessin, and today I'm going to be talking about the last 3 books that I read this week after finals. They were a treat, let me tell you. It feels so good to be done with the semester, but now I can focus on some books and some book content that I can create for December before I get back to school in January. We're just going to enjoy the moment, okay? So I'm here to talk about these 3 books. One was an anticipated book by Sophie Lark, Anastasia. This book highly anticipated for a lot of people, and I'll talk about my feelings about it. Also, I did kind of like a poll on Instagram. I asked people what book would they have me read before the end of the year that they think is something that I'm missing out on, basically. And I vowed that whatever book would win, I would read it no matter what, even if it was a book that I said in the past that I wouldn't want to read. Did get a couple of those suggestions, but there was 2 books that tied. One was King of Wrath by Huang, and the other one was Funny Feelings by DeWitt. I've seen both of these books make their rounds, Funny Feelings more recently, and I'm glad that both of them won and I got to read them so I can give you my thoughts. First, let's start off with Anastasia. Now, I was anticipating this read, but I was kind of setting my expectations a little bit lower because I didn't really enjoy the last 2 releases that Sophie Lark had written. I lowered my expectations for Anastasia. I didn't know what she was going to bring to the table because she's venturing into a realm that she hasn't written in before. Usually she's stayed with mafia-esque books. That's what she's written in the past. I have not read her standalone, so I'm not exactly sure what those are about. But I've only read her mafia romances plus her psychopath serial killer her duet. But this one's a fantasy. I would categorize Anastasia as historical fantasy. It deals with real people, real places, real events, but it has magical elements to it, and of course history is not going to be the same. So she changes things. She takes some creative liberties and she makes this world her own. Think of it as an alternate universe where the people in power, they're in power in a large part due to their magic. And the Romanovs have a specific type of magic that is carried down through the male line. And Anastasia is one of 4 girls. Her younger brother, Alexei, is very ill. He has hemophilia. Each child kind of manifests their own abilities as they get older, and none of them as of yet has manifested any of Nicholas's abilities, the Romanov abilities, okay? So that's kind of a sticking point in the book, and I will be doing a spoiler section for this. I have to talk about spoilers for this book for sure, but I just want to give you a general gist of what's going on. In the beginning, I want to say about the first 3 chapters, we're pretty much introduced to the whole Romanov clan. The whole family, the aunts and uncles, some of the cousins, as well as some of the servants who are close to the royal family at that time as well. Personally, for me, the first couple of chapters were quite boring for me. I was like, when is something more interesting going to happen? Also, we're starting this book off with a young Anastasia. I believe she's about 11 years old when the book starts. And I was really kind of getting bored of the introductions, but I will say there comes a point Anastasia does stow away on this train. Her brother is being brought to Nicholas. Nicholas has just recently quelled this Cossack rebellion, and he wants his son and heir to be there. Anastasia kind of like doesn't want to miss out on those types of things. She wishes she could go to those types of things, and she's like, she's a little sneaky, and she decides to get on the train to be able to go meet them. And that moment when she gets there, that's when the story starts picking up for me. And from that moment on, I was a lot more invested in the story. It just took me a little while to get into the book. And normally, if I would have picked up this book, had no idea who Sophie Lark was, I probably would have struggled to continue because the first couple of chapters were so slow for me. They weren't as like an attention grabbing as I like the first couple of chapters to be for me. I think it's a very important part of the book. This is what you're introducing the story, you're introducing the characters, and more oftentimes than not, you really have to have something that stands out in that first chapter, get your reader's attention. Since I am a fan of Sophie Lark, I of course pushed on, and I'm glad that I did. Like I said, we start off with an 11-year-old Anastasia, and this is where she meets her hero, her future hero, because they grow up together. His name's Damien, and he is the son of the Cossack leader. And he is a boy that has lots of like rage, this rebelliousness that's simmering beneath him. He tries to assassinate Anastasia's father, and as a result of this assassination attempt, he becomes like a ward of the Romanov family, and he's taken under the wing of Nicholas's brother as his ward. And this is how their romance begins. I really appreciate how gradually Sophie Lark built their relationship, because from the first moment that they have their first conversation together on the train ride back to St. Petersburg, you can tell that they have some sort of innate connection with each other. And I really, really love the way that Sophie Lark kindled that. It's like a slow burning flame. Definitely the romance is a slow burn for sure, but I think that she really establishes this friendship. It's not really a friendship, because he, of course, resents being taken in by the Romanovs. He wants his freedom, like the Cossacks want their freedom from the Romanovs, from Russia. And he doesn't want to lose his identity by becoming the ward of his hated enemy. So he's reluctant to be friends with this girl, but there's just something about her that's so compelling, and they can't help but almost gravitate toward each other. And I really love the way that Sophie Lark built that all up. I enjoyed that immensely. The magic, the fantasy elements that that comes into play, really freaking cool. I really like them. Of course, we have Rasputin as a character, and I also think that the way that she crafted this well-known figure. Of course, I'm a 90s baby. I'm well familiar with the animated cartoon of Anastasia. It's one of my favorite cartoons of the 90s, and I feel great attachment toward it. But I think that she really does a good job of making Rasputin as a character his own thing in this book. And I don't want to get into his character really that much without going into some spoilery details, but definitely the most interesting relationships in this book, besides Uncle Nikolasha, because I really love him. I love him as a character. I wish we saw a little bit more of him. I think that Anastasia and Damien's relationship is such a focal point, but so is Anastasia and Rasputin's relationship as well, and definitely the highlights of the book for me. Overall, I gave this book 4.5 stars. As much as I said that the first 3 chapters weren't as attention grabbing, it's really the only book that I have an issue with kind of pacing, I guess you would say. I don't even know if that's really considered a pacing issue. It's more just kind of like, give me something that wows me in the beginning that like makes me want to sink my teeth in, and I didn't get that in the first 3 chapters, but the rest of the book I think is paced pretty well. Some maybe would consider it slow. I think that it was paced just right, because I think that it lets the relationships, it gives them time to breathe and develop naturally over the course of many years. I think that Damien and Anastasia's relationship is very swoony. I would describe their relationship as swoony. Steamy, spicy, smutty, if you're looking for that. That's not what this is. There are intimate scenes, there are intimate moments, and they're beautiful, but I wouldn't categorize this as like an extremely spicy book, you know? But their relationship is so deep and so swoony and heartwarming. I really believe the love in these characters. It's fantastic. I think Sophie Lark did a fantastic job with that. So I do have some elements that kind of brought it down to the 4.5 star range. I was debating between a 4 and a 4.5, but I really think that Anastasia and Damien like really held on to my attention, that I'm willing, it's more of a 4.5 rating for me. But yeah, I want to talk about the things that didn't quite work for me, so I am going to throw up the spoiler section. I had some minor things that I wish Sophie Lark had included. And then there is the major thing that I think brought the book down for me in general. There is a time travel element that I kind of didn't love. I did not like that at the final battle, or what we think is around the final battle. Not if you look at the percentage of the book, you know that you have way more stuff to happen before the book ends, but it feels very climactic after Anastasia has been through this horrific 2 years where her whole entire family has been slaughtered by vampires, because Rasputin is a vampire and he has vendetta against the Romanov family, personal because his wife died. She spends the first year living in the city under an alias, working in a mill, and then she gets shipped off to the mines and spends another year suffering, so much suffering. And then when she and Damien confront Rasputin, all seems lost. It seems like Damien's dying. And then Anastasia gets thrown back in time because of and I always call it, it's the magic stone. I don't know, it's like charoite, and I don't know how to pronounce that correctly, so I call it the magic stone that everybody wants, the purple magic stone, everyone wants it. That gets used. Her music box is a memory keeper, which I really love that element. I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. She gets thrown back in the past. It's the day of what I like to refer to as the Red Wedding. If you don't watch Game of Thrones, it is a very harrowing episode and lots of people die. And that's what this scene is. Anastasia's sister's getting married and everyone dies, but she gets thrown back in time, has all the memories of those 2 years of suffering, that reunion with Damien, all those wonderful scenes that they had once they were reunited. She has all of that. None of the people in this current timeline have that, except for a piece of Rasputin's soul that went back with her as well. Kind of reminds me of Voldemort as well. And she has to convince them, hey, you all die tonight, and I'd rather you not. So let's make sure that we kill Rasputin. We gotta make sure that he doesn't find the huge cache of special magic gem that was in the mountain that I found. And I felt kind of sad that we were back in time once we were there. Not that I didn't want any of those people to still be alive. I think that one of my biggest pros in that category for like, let's go back in time and fix things is that Uncle Nicolasha survives. Like, I really truly love that man. I think that that's really the only pro that I have in favor of that time jump. And also because, you know, most of the family survives and lives on another day. It's a happily ever after, not just for Anastasia, but for all of her family, basically. And of course, yeah, I find that heartwarming. But, and Crystal, I was talking to Crystal about my thoughts, she found it surprising that I would have rathered the timeline stay where Anastasia and all the people that she knows experienced that suffering that 2 years after the Romanov massacre, and she would have prevailed there instead of bringing everybody else back. I think it would have been a little bit more impactful if that would have happened for me. I find it a little bit sad that she's the only one in the new timeline, in the timeline where the story ends on, that actually experienced all of that suffering. She went through some crap, man. That scene with Anna Pavlova in the mines, like, that was very moving. That was extremely moving. The reunion with Damien when he finds her in the forest and brings her back, like, that all, like, he felt that. He thought she was dead for all these years, and he's reunited with her. And they confess their love, and they're finally together, and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. And when she goes back to the original timeline, she can tell him all about it. She can show him that day, the memory keeper that they spent together, and when they finally realized that they were something more, it wasn't just friendship, it was something more. She can show him that, but he hasn't experienced any of that. She can just tell him about it, and she's the only one that has it, and I don't know why. It just brought it down, the book down a little bit for me. And it felt like Chekhov's time travel. And I'm not trying to dog like all time travel elements. I think it could work in certain books, but I don't know. I was just loving, I hate to say it, the suffering that Anastasia went through and how she experienced what the people of Russia were experiencing under her father's regime. She got a little taste of reality. She also experienced immense joy living the Cossack life, and I love that for her. I kind of wish that that was where her end game was living with Damien there. But in the end, she becomes Empress of all Russia, and she is an incredibly progressive Tsarina. So she does lots of reformations, which is all cool, but like, it's just so neat and tidy in a bow, you know? And I would have appreciated a little bit more mess. I don't know, suffering, gloominess. Yes. So yeah, those elements kind of brought it down for me. There were a couple other things. I wasn't expecting vampires to be the more paranormally element. They kind of brought a more paranormal feel, even though we had magic users in this world. It did feel a little bit more classic paranormal than it did fantasy, in my opinion. And I wish we did a little bit more with all of the rest of the creatures that apparently her ancestor ran out. And I want to know more about them. Are all vampires just inherently evil? Is it just Rasputin? Did he become evil after the death of his wife? Or again, are vampires just inherently evil? Do they like killing? We kind of got a taste of it in the letter that Damien sends to Anastasia once she figures out what Rasputin is. So is that what vampires are? What about the other magical creatures? I really wanted more of like Russian lore to come into play, like those types of creatures. And also I thought it was a little bit of a missed opportunity when Anastasia is escaping the mine. She ends up in the forest and she's being chased by wolves. She has, and I haven't even talked about Artemis, and I love Artemis, her pet hawk, and she can actually speak mind to mind with Artemis. She's the only one that like can hear her. In the forest, she connects with this king wolf, and I thought, oh my god, she's gonna have a connection with him, and like the wolves are gonna be on her side. She's gonna have like the power of like these natural Russian elements on her side to defeat Rasputin. No, that didn't happen, and I was a little bit disappointed about it. But again, managing my expectations with what Sophie Lark's intentions were, that wasn't what she intended, obviously. But I can't help but be just a little bit disappointed that why else would she connect with the king wolf like she connects with Artemis if that wasn't going to be like a thing, a relationship? I don't know. I wanted it to be more. So yeah, anyway, I've talked about this book enough. Again, 4.5 stars. I thought it was pretty great. Very decent venture into fantasy, if I say so. So next on the list was King of Wrath by Anna Huang. I've read the first 2 books in her Twisted series. I don't know what the series is actually called, but they all start with Twisted, so that's what it is to me. I've read the first 2 books in that series, and it's not that I didn't like them, like I was like extremely disappointed with them. They were just okay books, and I never felt like the need to finish the series. So Anna Huang hadn't been on my radar in quite a while. I heard a lot of people really were loving King of Wrath, but again, like I said, managing my own expectations. There's so many books. We're like drowning in how many great books are out there waiting to be discovered, and I just felt like I didn't need to continually try this author that fell more in like the 3.5 star range for me. But of course, sometimes we're wrong about these things, and I'm very grateful for everybody who voted and recommended for me to read King of Wrath before the end of the year, because I wouldn't have picked it up without you guys. And I ended up by really loving it. This is a modern marriage of convenience. They don't always work for me because I think it's hard to do a marriage of convenience in modern days. Like, what else would force you to be in this marriage? Like, what realistic sounding reason is there to pretend to be in a marriage or be forced to be in a marriage? And I thought this one worked really well. The heroine, Vivian Lau, she is an event planner, and her dad is this powerful man, but he's new money. So he's trying to break into like New York society. Even though he's newly wealthy, he doesn't have these old connections that old money has. And a way to get connections is for him to have his daughters marry into powerful families. Vivian's sister has already been married off. She is 28 now. Her parents kind of always have been pressuring her, you need to find a match, and if you don't find a match, we're going to find one for you. She's always expected it. Her sister had an arranged marriage, and one day at dinner, she is informed by her parents that they found her fiance. The contract is drawn up. She has no say. And in Chinese culture, you bow to what the head of your family tells you to do, you know? You respect your elders. And so Vivian, even though she's just like, she's put off by it, you can tell in the way that she dresses herself to go to dinner with her family that she's changing herself to be what her family needs her to be at that dinner, because her mom's always telling her that she doesn't look put together, not that shade of lipstick, all that. So she doesn't wear her sleek suits and red lipstick around her family. She wears like tweed suits and pearls around her family. So we already know that she's willing to do stuff that she normally wouldn't want to do for the sake of her family. And that very night, she's introduced to her fiance, the most eligible bachelor, Dante Russo. He's very powerful Italian family. Her father knows that this is the shoe-in for him to be in society. There's a kicker. Vivian is unaware that Dante is being blackmailed into this marriage. Her father has found material on Dante's brother. It's hanging over his head, and it's dangerous stuff. It's dangerous stuff what he has on the brother. His life is in danger, and so Dante, the most powerful man who doesn't let anybody fuck around with him, is forced into this situation that he does not want to be in at all. And one of the stipulations is that he can't tell Vivian. So of course it's a point of contention, you know? The dad's kind of pushing it, like, I want you to get married soon. I want there to be an announcement soon. Dante negotiates that the wedding will take place in a year, but the father's like, she's moving in with you. He wants those connections to be relevant now for him, for his climb in the social ladder. And Vivian doesn't understand, like, well, if you're entering into this contract, why are you being such an asshole to me? Because Dante, of course, is. He doesn't want to be married to her. He's trying to find a way out of this contract, and he's convinced that he can just keep her completely separate, and eventually he's going to get out of this contract. But of course, this forced proximity situation where she's forced to live with him, that's not how it plays out. She gets under his skin. We love it when they do. I love forced proximity for this exact reason. It forces you to be around somebody that maybe you have a wrong impression of, that you've made assumptions about, and then it really forces you to get to know that person. And I really loved it. I liked the sexual tension. I liked the small moments, like the scene where they're taking engagement pictures and the photographer's like forcing them to be closer, forcing them to kiss, and it's like revolutionary. Of course, it's mind-blowing. Then they have a really quiet moment where they get the breakfast at a little kiosk on the road, and she's just like, never thought this very powerful businessman would just like get breakfast at this small little place. And he's being real with her in that moment. And he catches himself. He's like, no, can't be real with her. Gotta keep her at a distance. And I love that. I love that. Anyway, I thought that the conflict was handled very well. And I also really want to point out that I have a tendency to be disappointed when it comes to third act conflicts. I feel like either the author forces the issue or blows it so out of proportion that I'm just like, it feels unbelievable that we can fix things in this short amount of time and make it like, oh, it's fine and dandy now, even though I did this horrible, heinous thing or said this horrible thing that I personally was like, I don't know if I'd forgive that person. Anyway, that's not what happens here. I think the conflict was perfect, and Anna Huang gave me enough time, gave them enough time to come back from it. And I really appreciated that. So I gave this book 5 stars. I thought it was lovely. So glad that I read it. Then I moved on to Funny Feelings, a completely different beast. Like all 3 of these books are so different. Funny Feelings by DeWitt. Lots of people recommended it to me when I asked the question. Of course, it tied with King of Wrath. And when I posted that those were the 2 that won, I actually got more messages saying like, I cannot wait you to read Funny Feelings. Like Zay and Caitlin were like, oh my God, Funny Feelings, okay? So many people were excited that I was about to read this book. For me, it has a lot of Marvelous Miss Maisel vibes. I actually really like that show. I haven't watched like the last season, but I love it. Our heroine is a stand-up comedian. Her name is Farley Jones. And this is a friends to lovers, mutual pining, fake dating situation with her older manager. Meyer Hannigan, he is a former stand-up comedian. He doesn't do stand-up comedy anymore. And a few years ago, they had this chance run in and he became her manager. And now they're like best friends. Meyer is a single dad. His daughter Hazel is such a highlight in this book. Beautiful, wonderfully done character. And in the second chapter, we get to see how they meet, and it involves Hazel's birthday party. Meyer is also like a grumpy character and Farley is like a ray of sunshine. And the birthday party has gone wrong. They can't do what they originally planned. It's raining, it's pouring outside, and he decides to take his daughter to this lounge where he did stand-up comedy. His friend owns it, and it's during the day, nobody's there, and he's like, I need a place to gather all these little girls, and I don't know how to make it fun for them. He feels like he is such a failure. He does not know how to make this birthday party fun. In comes Farley Jones. She's a little bit foul-mouthed. She is full of energy, like just like vibrating with energy. Immediately takes to Hazel, and she knows ASL, so she can sign to his daughter, and she makes this party so fun, like this complete and total stranger. And I was so charmed by this meeting between Farley and Hazel and Meyer. And of course she knows who he is. He is pretty famous. She is a fan, but I just love that. I love how a friendship develops from that moment, because he is so charmed by her. Immediately taking to his daughter, making her feel special, making her day so much fun, even though it wasn't what they originally planned. It was beautiful, wonderful, one of my favorite scenes of the book. And now, a couple of years later, he's been managing her career. She's been making a name for herself. Another female stand-up comedian is getting a tour together with a group of women, and they invite Farley to be on that with them. They also suggest that she should date somebody for like publicity reasons, like somebody, they could suggest a person who, I believe that one of them is in like a fake dating relationship with a football player, and they're like, oh, we can ask someone from the team, like it happens all the time, we'll drop a contract or whatever. But their immediate thought is, hey, why don't you date Meyer? And Farley has been secretly pining after this man for years, and so has Meyer. Meyer doesn't feel comfortable pursuing a relationship with her because he is her manager. He feels like that's that power discrepancy. He also feels almost like an old soul, like so much gloomy stuff has happened to him that he doesn't want to weigh her down. But he doesn't know that she's had a crush on him for years, and she does not know that he also pines after her as well. And it's beautiful. I don't want to set expectations too high, because I'm definitely a person that doesn't want a book to get like overhyped for me before I'm able to pick it up. But I will say I'm not normally a crier, but there's a scene in this book that I literally cried. It was so beautiful. I think that DeWitt is so good at writing this mutual pining, this connection that these two have. You can tell that they're best friends, but the love, this deep, deep love is so apparent on this page. There are so many scenes and passages that I highlighted that I was just like, this is beautiful. I freaking love this. Like, this book was giving me all the freaking feels. It was beautiful, perfect, loved it. The conflict toward the end, perfectly handled. I was just in awe of this book. It is one of my favorite books of the year. One of my favorite books of the year. 6 stars. I feel like when I talk about this book, there's no way that I can do it justice. I feel like experiencing it, that people need to experience this book, because I surely cannot convey all the emotions that this book makes me feel, at least not adequately, in my opinion. But I will say, what sets this book apart, there are books where I'm like, that was so enjoyable. And months down the line, of course, I think about it and I have my favorite scenes and all that. But when I was reading this book, I know that months down the line, a year from now, I'm going to look back on funny feelings, and I'm not only going to remember my favorite scenes, but I'm going to remember how reading those scenes made me feel. It's like the experience and also the story are so intertwined, and they're so memorable for me. And I think that that's why it sets it so much apart. There's so many scenes where I had to put my Kindle down and just be like, that was lovely, you know? Like, I just had to bask in it for a second, and that's why this book is 6 stars. Okay, I'm gonna throw up a spoiler section because I have to talk about the scene that made me cry. So the scene that made me cry is actually their first full sex scene. Remember I talked about the scene where Farley is introduced to them. She makes the party so much better. She eventually tells Meyer a story about what her hang up about umbrellas are, because she's always borrowing his, and he's like, well, let's buy you an umbrella. Then she ends up by telling this story about how her mom bought her this really fun, quirky umbrella, and her mom was like her best friend. Her mom died when she was 16, all this jazz. Amazing story about an umbrella, okay? And in this moment where they're finally getting together, they're finally about to have sex, he's hesitant to pull down his pants, and she's just like, look, whatever is going down there, if it's S-shaped or whatever, I can work with it. It doesn't matter. And then it turns into such a poignant moment because he has this watercolor umbrella tattooed on his thigh. It's the same temporary tattoo that Farley gave to Hazel on her birthday. She put it on her hand, and he had it tattooed on his thigh because he's been pining after her for years, and he tells her how lonely he was before he found her. Like, God, I'm gonna cry. Like, I'm not a crier. I don't like to cry on camera. I don't like to be this way, but oh my God, I'm telling you, like, I felt this. Like, I felt how lonely these two were without each other, and you really feel how deep their connection is, and I thought it was beautiful. And of course, I mean, like, oof. So yeah, I just had to share that because there's not much that makes me cry, and I don't mean to say that I'm a hard ass and hard to impress and stuff. I just feel like I feel emotions for sure, and I feel moving scenes, but you just never know what type of line paired with such vibrant characters to bring that moment to life for you. You never know whenever that's going to hit you, and it just hit me for this book. It really did. I really felt it. I really felt it. Those small moments were so big when I read them. So anyway, I love that book. 6 stars. Freaking amazing. So I am so happy that those 2 books were suggested for me to read before the year was out, because I probably wouldn't have picked them up on my own. So I'm very grateful to everyone that encouraged me to read it. All right, guys, that is it. That's all that I read, all the new books that I read this week. I did have finals this week, so didn't have a ton of time to read new books, but hopefully next week I'll have some more new books to talk about other than these 3, but I think that I blabbered on quite a while for these 3, so it's fine. Let me know if you have any more suggestions, any other books that you feel like I definitely need to read, new releases specifically that released in 2022 that may end up on a favorites of the year list. I do plan on doing that, but I do want December to finish out before that video goes out. So I'm probably gonna wait until the very last minute until any of my end of the year videos go out. I do plan on doing a 2023 anticipated reads video and a couple other things as well. But mostly I'm just happy to talk about books again, to just chat and discover new books. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, and if you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe to get notified of any future videos that I do. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, life's better with a little HEA. Bye guys.